assumed he was trying to do that.
Hello there, welcome to the F1 Weekend Debrief, and what a weekend of sport it was, Rob Smedley.
Brilliant. I think we had the best race of the season, didn't we? Absolute wheel-to-wheel action all the way. Excellent race between the two Mercedes. We had Max and Charles battling at it again, you know, another great battle there. All the action with Sebastian and Max coming later. Right up until the end, we had strategic calls coming in. I think it was just brilliant all the way to the last lap.
It was indeed, and Bottas might have got pole, but as Hamilton proved, it's not over till it's super over.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yeah, how's that? Another 1-2 for Mercedes, and nice for them, Rob, having overheated and not being able to push in Austria, coming back and showing what they're really made of in at Silverstone.
Yeah, well, you haven't got all the ambient problems and all that. You know, there's not as much wide open throttle. You've got more cooling in Silverstone, lower ambient, as we said. So they could push. They were once again the class of the field.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the start, and it was a nice touch. Whiting started the race. It was Justin Whiting, Charlie's, of course, son. That was a nice touch. And Bottas cuts across, but otherwise, decent start from both the Mercs.
Yeah, you know, Lewis makes it a little bit of a better start, and then as you say, Valtteri gets himself into a position where he does chop across his bows a little bit. But it's all fair, you know. They're two great drivers. They've left each other enough room, and then it's kind of, you know, business as usual from that point on.
Well, something we're not used to is Hamilton and Bottas really going for it, and we've got the 360-degree cameras off the chassis. And was this sort of orchestrated, or were they all proper gloves off?
No, this was proper gloves off. I mean, you can see that Lewis, you know, riding on board with, has got the better run around that first part of the Luffield complex, but then Valtteri gets a better run down the old pit straight going into Copse. So you'll see Valtteri jink out from the left-hand side. There he is. He gets alongside, and then going into Copse, he's got the corner there. He's got the corner, and Lewis has had to cede. It's a really good battle between the two of them.
And that's flat as well.
Oh, that's flat. That's proper flat. So they're racing there.
And as an engineer's point of view, I mean, I spoke to James Allison after the race. He said he was, you know, beside himself with worry. But there's something about these two, Rob. I don't think they need to worry about Hamilton and Bottas. They seem to have a bit more respect, and they'll leave each other. They'll know that even that much is enough to leave each other.
Yeah, two great drivers. I mean, it's not for us, you know, once you get past a certain level of driver, let's say, it's not for us engineers to worry about it anymore. You know, they're doing their job. They know what they're doing. They are at the absolute top of their game, and they're two drivers who respect each other a lot. Not only respect each other, but have a great deal of respect for all of the people in the team. And I think that's, you know, that's once you've got that synergy going on between the drivers and the team, they're not going to make silly mistakes.
Okay, well, a few seconds behind the Mercedes, there was much less restraint between two of the star up-and-coming drivers of Formula One. Yes, it's Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc again, and this was picking up where they left off in Austria. We had round one, and, well, I could just watch these two all day.
It's brilliant, isn't it? We've got this in store for the next 10 years or whatever. Just going at it, but again, you know, okay, there's a little bit less respect than between Lewis and Valtteri. There's a little bit more wheel banging that goes on between the two of them, as we've seen here and in Austria. But they're still two great drivers. They're not making silly mistakes. They're not finishing up with the car in a million bits. It's just really good racing.
Tell you what I was really impressed with was the Honda in the back of the Red Bull. Here we go riding with Max Verstappen, Leclerc in the Ferrari ahead, and the Honda is closing up on the Ferrari.
The Honda, you know, to be absolutely fair, the Honda and the Red Bull, you know, they've made great gains from last year with the philosophy of their car as to how much they have to, how much drag they've taken off the car.
More banging wheels. This is after the safety car where Leclerc and Verstappen just turns in on Leclerc there, doesn't he?
No, not really. They've given each other enough room. I mean, we can't be too, you know, it can't be a nanny state. You know, they're Formula One drivers. They're young boys who are racing the fastest cars in the world. There's going to be a little bit of wheel banging. Each of them wants to be, you know, each of them thinks he's the best, and quite rightly so. There's going to be a little bit of wheel banging, you know, but they've left enough room for each other. They've got respect. They're not going to do anything silly. You know, I'm all for it. Let's have more of it.
How much do you think has Max Verstappen learnt about his wheel-to-wheel racing. And how impressed have you been with Leclerc? Because Verstappen's more experienced than Leclerc. Leclerc's only a year and a half into it, in that he can do this.
Well, I think Max has matured immensely, hasn't he, from those early days? And you know, why wouldn't he? Because he's obviously been at it a few years now, as you said. But I think, you know, overall, I think you've got to be impressed with just the pair of them. The pair of them are brilliant, and I think there's a real respect growing. You know, there's a real, as you always see between two emerging stars like these two guys. You always see that, you know, they've picked each other as their rival for the next 10 years or whatever. Until someone else comes on the scene, that's how it's going to be.
Well, there was a good rivalry in the pits as well, because before the safety car, Red Bull chanced their arm. They followed Charles Leclerc. They told Max Verstappen to follow Charles Leclerc into the pits, thinking, quite rightly, as it turned out, that they might be able to get the edge on Ferrari with a quicker pit stop. And this was cracking stuff.
It certainly was. This was, you know, the pit stops was less than 2 seconds for Red Bull, and you can see the boys there. They're absolutely over the moon.
Isn't this a bit tight?
No, that's all right. As long as you're running, you know. So Charles is in the Ferrari. He's definitely in the fast lane, and Max, as we saw, was a little bit into the, you know, he was in the no man's land. But that's absolutely fine, and he had the corner, so that meant that he could get out the pits first.
And what is it with Ferrari? I mean, are they still thinking about, you know, that bad pit stop in Bahrain a year and a half ago?
No, of course not.
And they're just slower after that?
No, of course not. I think what you're looking at, I mean, that's a 2.79, so it's not the end of the world what Ferrari have done there. Yeah. They're a little bit slower on the front left, as you're going to see. But I think what you're actually seeing is outstanding pit stops from the Red Bull boys. You know, they've really got it nailed, and they're doing it consistently as well. And that's the important thing. You know, somebody like me, who would sit in the middle of the pit wall. It's not that I want a 1.8 second pit stop and then we can do 4 second pit stops for the rest of the race. You want to nail it every single time. But if you can nail it every single time, and they can be as quick as what they're doing, it's that's the
golden ticket, isn't it?
The golden ticket.
Well, let's have a look, because we put the two pit stops next to each other, and what it really shows, incredibly, is that by the time Verstappen's wheels are off, Ferrari is still catching up.
Yeah, so they've just stopped. You've got Charles on the right there and Max on the left. But if you look at the front left of Charles's car, it's taking some time to come off. So the wheels are already off in 0.62 seconds. And they're back on at 1.16 seconds. Yeah. And the wheels off, because of that front left on Charles's car on the right-hand side of the screen, it's almost the same time. Max has got going with 1.96 seconds, and they've just got the wheels on. Almost the same time for Ferrari. So that's where that second comes from. So it was just one mistake on that front left of trying to get the wheel off, which they couldn't. Maybe a double stab on the gun or something like that. And there's a second between the two pit stops, and that's enough for Max to get past. Yeah,
OK, so Red Bull were absolutely right to chance their arm and have a go at beating Ferrari in the pits, because it worked for them. It's a lovely shot on the 360-degree camera, though. It's always good to see. Let's have a look at it. He comes in and, you know, would Verstappen have known, or would he have thought, oh, well, I'm trailing him in, I'm probably going to trail him out again?
Oh, I don't think Max Verstappen thinks like that.
He would have trusted his guys to get him out.
I don't think Max Verstappen thinks like that, and nor Charles Leclerc, on, you know, to be absolutely fair. But you can see, and he's absolutely on it as well. If you watch from the other angle, when the light goes green, there's hardly any reaction time. So he's on it. He wants to get this. He wants to get this position. He's been trying to get it before that point on the track, and you know, him and his team nailed it, or more to the point, his team nailed it. But I think, you know, if you carry on watching now, it just couldn't get them cold tyres working, and he struggled with that a little bit during the. You know, with a few times we saw it, he struggled with it, even after the safety car. And there's Charles going past, so then he had it all to do again.
Yes, having said how great the pit stop was, Max slightly let the side down there by letting Leclerc through. But then Red Bull had a chance to have another go with Pierre Gasly, and this one was a new world record. There you go. I've been talking, and it's already happened.
Yeah, it's so fast. 1.91 seconds, and actually my old team Williams used to hold that record. What I really love about that shot, and it was exactly the same as what happened after Max's pit stop, is the way all the boys react. You know, this is their chance, and this is the big part that they play in these races. But if you look how they all react, they're just over the moon. And when you've got that synergy of the boys and all the equipment working together, it's a really good feeling.
So even though it's a few tenths of a second, they can tell in their heads when they've done a 1.9 1.91 compared to a 2.1.
They're not autonomous, so I don't know whether they can tell if
I
they've
bet they
done a
can.
1.91. But they know it's quick.
They know it's
quick. And even, you know, from somebody like myself, when you sit and watch it on the pit wall, you know, you can tell if it's 1/10, 2/10, you know, one way or the other.
So first round of pit stops out of the way, but those who hadn't stopped yet were in for a bit of an early Christmas present because Antonio Giovinazzi spun into the gravel trap, brought out the safety car, and then it was more or less a free pit stop for those who hadn't visited their pit crews yet. Rob, explain why it's so beneficial to make a stop under a safety car.
Well, you lose less time, so I've got to explain it like this. So, and it's the same way I explained it to my wife some years ago when she was asking me to explain it. So, if you're on the motorway and you're stuck in a traffic jam, and you pull into the services, then you lose much less time while you sit down and you have your sandwich on your journey than if the traffic was free flowing. So, if the traffic's moving at 70 miles an hour and you pull into the services, then you lose half an hour, let's say. If that traffic jam has only moved from one side of the services to the other, which is now our analogy for the safety car, slowing up the traffic, which is on the track, then you pulling in at the services and then back out onto the motorway is much less time.
And do people leave their strategies open and thinking, oh, well, I might wait and see if there's a safety car later, or is that a bit of a...
Yeah, you definitely take a chance. If you've got nothing to lose, like say, you know, the good example here is in Lewis's case, he had nothing to lose, so that second place was banked. Almost for certain that was banked because they were pulling away from all the cars behind. So at that point, you know, probably what the Mercedes pit wall was thinking at that point was to leave him out, was to give him fresher tyres at the end, and then maybe, you know, they could have had a little battle between him and Valtteri. But in doing that, there's also in the back of your mind, when you're the only car still out, if there's a safety car here, then we're going to win big. And you know, Lewis did, Sebastian did, Carlos Sainz did, you know, so all of those cars who stayed out and hadn't pitted in that first round of pit stops, they all won big.
Talking of Sebastian Vettel, he did benefit, but that led him right into the path of Max Verstappen, and a replay of China, or whatever you want to call it. It didn't end particularly well.
Not really.
Why do you think?
Well, Sebastian, you know, almost admitted afterwards he's only human and he's made a mistake. If you look, Max hasn't really changed his line at all. Sebastian's just got behind him. You know, when we looked at the data between that lap and the lap before, Max has braked almost at exactly the same point as he did the lap previously. So there's nothing wrong with what Max has done.
It does happen very quickly. I mean, some people were thinking, you know, did Max brake earlier? But this side-by-side comparison, when we look at the data, this absolutely proves that Max didn't brake earlier for that corner than he had done before.
Yeah, so we're seeing it here in real time, and you can see that Max is the car on the right, the blue car, Sebastian's on the left. So if you look at that left picture, he's approaching as they hit the brake. They both hit the brake around about the same time. Sebastian's got a distinct lack of downforce there because he's so close to Max. So he's in the dirty air of Max, and therefore when he's hit the brake, even if it's in the same place as it was the lap before, he's going to have much less downforce. If you look at it slowed down here just as we get to the brake, and if you watch that bottom bar which says brake and watch when the red bars light up, it's almost at the same point. So we're just waiting for it now. So Sebastian's hit the brake. It's a fraction of a second before Max.
Wow. But
he's got much less downforce and he just can't stop the car in time.
So actually it's Vettel who braked first?
Yes, but I mean, we're talking fractions of a second. You know, we're not talking that there was any brake testing going on, or you know, Sebastian has tried to get out of the situation he's in by braking a little bit earlier, but it's just too late. There's not enough downforce on the car, and that's caught him out.
Okay, I mean, there was of course the apology in Parc Ferme. Sebastian came and said, despite saying on the radio, you know, what was going on with him there, he went and apologised to Max. What's going on with Sebastian? It seems since Canada, since the win was, as he would put it, taken away from him, he's lost his mojo.
Well, I don't know whether he's lost his mojo. I mean, just go back to that point, you know, of him apologising in Parc Ferme to Max. I think that was quite a classy touch, to be honest. That's the 4 times world champion that you see there. You know, it's a boy who's under an enormous amount of pressure, but he's still man enough to go up to one of his adversaries and say, sorry, I've made a mistake. So, you know, I think that shows the mettle that we've got with Sebastian. And it's really for, you know, for the team to get around him and for him to try to to motivate himself out of where he's at the minute. It's a difficult job. It's not easy, you know, and he's got the weight of Ferrari on his shoulders at the minute, and all eyes on him, and almost waiting for him to make the next mistake or whatever. But you put, you know, these boys are under an enormous amount of pressure, and they really are at the top of their game, and everything's scrutinised. So you've got to feel for him, and let's just hope that he can dig himself out of it with the help of the team. The team need to get round him and show him, not just say it, but show him that they support him. And then hopefully, you know, we're going to get back to the good battles between him and Lewis.
Now we can clear up what was going on with Hamilton and Bottas towards the end of the race and the pit stop that wasn't for Lewis Hamilton. Listen to this.
Okay, so box.
You sure?
Copy, Lewis. We have a free pit stop. Valtteri also has to stop.
I want to continue.
Box.
Tyres fine.
Okay, Lewis, we're going to go to the end.
Well, I don't know, Rob. For me, that sounds like Lewis is kind of taking control of his own strategy. But Mercedes were right, weren't they? They don't know the tyre might fall off the cliff. You want to give him nice soft tyres, new tyres for a fastest lap attempt? Get him in. Nothing to lose.
Yeah, but then, you know, I think as we talked about even during the race, the pit stops can go wrong, and I think he's probably made the right decision there. There's a little bit of confusion. He probably saw Valtteri behind. He might not have known that Valtteri was on a different strategy, or he might have just forgotten at that point, whatever. And he's thinking, well, why are they trying to stop me? You know, and he can feel those tyres underneath him as well. You know, one thing that racing drivers can do is they feel, you know, every inch of the road through their bottom. And he'll know whether them tyres are good to go or not, you know, and you've got to trust him in that situation. He's got so much experience. So, you know, he's made a call and said, well, I don't really want to put any risk to it. I'm fine. I'll just stay out here and I'll just do my thing and I'll win the race for you. And the drivers are well within the rights. You know, we can have, as engineers, we can have all the best tools and computational power and best engineering brains on the job, but sometimes the driver can help to ward us off making daft decisions.
A daft decision. I mean, Lewis was right because he managed to set the fastest lap of the race on old, hard tyres once again and surprised us with his pace.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? It was a pretty outstanding thing that he did. But he's obviously, you know, he'll have felt that. The key point there is that if he was able to pump in that lap on the very last lap, which was an awesome, outstanding feat on those hard tyres, he'd have felt that he was giving himself a lot of margin. He'd have known that there was a lot of margin and he could have gone a lot faster. And in doing that, he'll have known that he could have got those tyres to the end of the race. He had 7-8 laps to go or something like that. He just didn't want to take that risk.
Well, there were lots of other stories up and down the grid, but for Haas F1, it was another race to forget. At an event where they had Grosjean on an old aero package and Magnussen on the new aero package, they needed as much data as they could get to analyse their way out of their problems, and then this happened.
Have a puncture. Okay, I think we have a rear left puncture,
Well, Rob, it's not the first time these two have come together. I don't know, if you were in Günther Steiner's shoes, what would you do next?
He's got a difficult job, the boy, hasn't he? To get this thing back on track. You know, it's Formula One, so everybody's operating at such an incredibly high level that you know, the odd mistake here and there, you know, not being able to get on top of your car or whatever, it's exposed just because Formula One is so brutal. I think that, you know, the drivers are going to have to start helping, and they can't help when they're banging wheels. I know it's the start of the race and the emotions are running high, but they're two professional drivers who drive for Haas. You know, it doesn't say either Magnussen or Grosjean on their overalls, it says Haas. Yeah. And they've got to start helping the team out.
All right, well, someone else who's had a tough time recently has been Pierre Gasly, but he had his best race of the season, ending up fourth, helped slightly between the clash between his teammate Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel. But as Verstappen was closing on him earlier in the race, he had to be told by the boss to move over.
Yeah, it's Christian. You need to let Max go. He's on a different strategy.
Rob, I can see both sides to this. You know, if Max wasn't overtly trying to get it beside him and overtake, Gasly's got to drive his own race, hasn't he?
Yeah, I quite like this. You know, I think you know we're all desperate to see the renaissance of Pierre Gasly. And, you know, he's had such a brilliant weekend and the team have got behind him and, you know, they've talked about this Control-Alt-Delete thing, you know, and the reset. And I think it's fantastic. He's then, you know, he's got himself into a position where he's finally in front of Max and he's doing the job. And his engineer's telling him, right, now you've got to move over. And he's thinking, I don't want to do that, you know. I just want to finish this race and have, you know, finish what's been a brilliant weekend, which it was a brilliant weekend for the lad anyway. So I think that, you know, he's bound to feel a little bit aggrieved, but once Christian gets on the radio and asks him to move over, you know, he's done it. He realises what he needs to do.
He knows it's serious. Okay, well, another driver who felt his race could have been better was Nico Hülkenberg, who had this to say to his engineer Mark Slade after the race.
I just don't understand why we couldn't stop early. We just cost ourselves this race. I was genuinely struggling, not putting any gains or any like that. You just gotta believe me sometimes. Believe.
Understand, Nico. Fully understand.
It's obvious. My tires were 140 and still, no, he's fine. Let him stay out. It's all good.
Copy that, Nico. Understood. Talk about it after the race.
Oh dear, the life of an engineer, just getting shouted at basically by your driver. I don't know who's right and who's wrong there. Hülkenberg.
I feel a bit sorry for the engineer. You know, his engineer Mark Slade, who's got a huge amount of experience. He's a really, really competent, good engineer as well. Good race
engineered
engineer.
Hakkinen to his World Championships.
Yeah, got a few World Championship medals under his belt as Mark. So he's a good engineer, and you know, I think him and Nico get on very well. And I think the reason why I feel a bit sorry for him there, and I've been in this situation, is that actually, you know, a lot of those decisions won't have been Mark's. You'll have had, you know, some the tyre people, you know, guiding the strategists on what they needed to do. And Mark will be, you know, be feeding some of that information in, but he's not making that final decision. But he's the one who's communicating to the driver. And when emotions are high, you know, Nico's got rather overexcited there at the end of the race and just vented his spleen on poor Mark.
Okay, well, it was an electric race for Alex Albon, who had an intermittent problem with the energy recovery system, part of the power unit. And Toro Rosso weren't sure that if they pitted him, that the car would be electrically live or not, and told him to look after his tyres because he probably wouldn't be able to make another stop on the radio.
Do you think any chance to make it to the end? Do you think any chance to make it?
You should have told me this earlier, not now.
We didn't know there was a situation. We have a situation.
Well, Albon did do a good job. He finished just outside the points in 12th, I think it was. But explain, I mean, they could have pitted the car, but what precautions would they have had to make? And if the car's electric live, then how come Albon sitting in it is okay?
Because the tyres are made of rubber, which doesn't conduct electricity. So the car itself is not earthed to the ground, which is why sometimes when you see the drivers get out of the car when they're on track, they stand on top of the cockpit and they jump off. So they're never at any point touching the car and the ground and making that electrical connection. Okay. So you can do a pit stop with a car that is live, as you call it, and what happens is the boys just put on these really big, thick rubber gloves. They look like Marigold washing up gloves.
Right.
And they do the pit stop with those on, which just slows it down. It usually results in a 4 or 5 second pit stop, and that's what Toro Rosso were trying to avoid. They knew that if they'd have pitted Albon, then the pit stop would have been slow and he would have come out, you know, way back down the field.
Okay, well, it's no shock to learn that the race after Silverstone, as it historically always has been, is Germany. Yeah, always a good one in the middle of the summer, the German Grand Prix, the Grosser Preis von Deutschland, not the old blast through the forest, unfortunately. I still miss them. But what about the new circuit? Who should that favour? Mercedes, obviously, but what about the fight behind them?
Well, we're going to continue to see that. You know, if Red Bull could take it to Ferrari in a high-speed circuit and a power circuit or a power and drag circuit like they could in Silverstone, then they're going to be able to do the same in Hockenheim. Very, very similar characteristics, in fact, from what you want out of a car in Silverstone as to what you want out of a car in Hockenheim. So let's just hope that we're going to get more battles between the 2 Red Bulls and the 2 Ferraris.
Good stuff. Look forward to that. Well, that's pretty much the checkered flag for us. Thanks very much, Rob Smedley, for joining us. Thank you for watching. And Hockenheim awaits, and surely Sebastian Vettel's luck will change at home. Or will it? Join us in a couple of weeks to find out. Bye-bye.